All right, welcome to the rundown. We're going to be getting into how important this upcoming season is for the Bengals and the Dolphins, and I'm also going to be giving a little preview of my Seattle Seahawks and who's going to make the Super Bowl in 2026. So I'm going to start off with the Bengals, and this is a crucial year for them. They were 9-8 last year. They missed the playoffs. They started off 1-4, and they also started off 0-2 for the third straight year. And that 1-4 hole was just too big to climb out of. In two of those losses, the offense scored 33 and 38 points, and the fact that they lost two of those games is crazy. And what really did them in last year for the vast majority of it was the defense. I would say though, for the first two games last year, it wasn't the defense that did them in, it was the offense that couldn't generate enough points. But other than that, for the most part, it was the defense that caused them to lose those games. And I don't know. I'm hoping that this year they can start off on the right track. They have the Browns this year in Cleveland, and then they have the Jaguars at home, and those should be two winnable games. At least one of those games should be winnable, but I don't know. Who knows? They might lose two of those games, but I'm hoping that this time around they can get started on the right track. And just going back to the defense last year, it was pretty bad. I mean, the defense allowed 434 points, which was tied for 25th in the NFL. And when you give up those amount of points, they gave up 30 points more than five times, and you just can't win like that. I mean, offenses need help, and even though they have an explosive offense with Burrow, Jamar, and T. Higgins, you can't expect your offense to continuously put up 35, 40 points in order for you to win. And unfortunately for them in the 2025 season, I just think the defense is going to do them again. They did fire defensive coordinator Lou Anarumo, and they hired Al Golden, the defensive coordinator for Notre Dame, to be their defensive coordinator. But I just don't think that's enough of a fix. I mean, he did do a pretty good job in Notre Dame. Like, his defense gave up 15 and a half points per game, which isn't bad at all. But I just don't view this as a Vic Fangio hiring where, like, Vic Fangio is this great defensive coordinator and he can just change defenses. I just don't look at Al Golden as that. But who knows? I may be wrong. Stranger things have happened, but I don't think the defensive coordinator change is going to be enough because they didn't really fix any of the major issues, whether it's the secondary or the pass rush. And they've already started off on the wrong foot this year. I mean, Trey Hendrickson was holding out. They couldn't get a contract done with him. He reported back to training camp. And then it took them weirdly a while to sign their first round pick in Shamar Stewart, which is very strange. I mean, first round picks, they get signed pretty early, and all of the other first round picks in this year's draft, they got signed on pretty early except him. And that was just a weird story. And I don't understand why it took so long for them to sign him. I mean, the only thing that they really have on their side is, according to Warren Sharp, they have the 17th hardest schedule. But even with them having the 17th hardest schedule, I just don't think that's going to be enough to make the playoffs this year. And a big reason why is because of who's in their division. I mean, they got the Ravens, who are pretty damn good, who are probably going to win 13, 14 games this year. And I mean, the Ravens are pretty star studded with their quarterback. I mean, they have a decent set of wide receivers. They have an amazing defense. And you also got the Pittsburgh Steelers in that division. And I mean, Mike Tomlin, he can just win 9, 10 games with any quarterback or any roster, it looks like. I mean, that man can win with Duck Hodges, Russell Wilson, an old washed up Ben Roethlisberger. And I'm pretty sure, even though Aaron Rodgers is older and he's definitely lost some athleticism and mobility, I'm sure that he'll be able to win 9, 10 games with Aaron Rodgers. So they already have their work cut out for them in that standpoint. And I think Buffalo is going to win the AFC East. I think Kansas City is going to win the AFC West. I think the Texans are going to win the AFC South. I think the Ravens are going to win the AFC North. And my wild cards are the Chargers, the Steelers, and the Broncos. Can they possibly overtake Denver? Yeah, they definitely can. But I think all those other teams are pretty much locked in unless some crazy injury happens. And if crazy injuries do happen, I guess the Bengals can sneak in that way and potentially get a higher seed. But other than that, I don't see them making the playoffs. I mean, they can overtake Denver, but I think that's it. So if they miss the playoffs, it's going to be pretty bad for them, and I think it's going to be even worse for Burrow because just the discourse on him is going to get really, really, really bad. I mean, a lot of his critics are going to point out, well, how can he be a top five QB? He's missed the playoffs for 3 straight years, and I mean, they're not going to point out the fact that in the 2023 season, he only played 10 games, but they were 5-5 at that point, and I mean, with 7 games left to go, could they have potentially stuck into the playoffs? I don't know, maybe, but with them being 5-5, it certainly didn't look any good. And then last year, the guy did potentially everything he could. I mean, I know I brought up the fact that in the first 2 games, the offense didn't play particularly well, but I mean, Joe Burrow would have won the MVP last year if his team was able to win 4 more games. I mean, the man had 43 touchdowns and 9 interceptions, and he just was balling out, but his defense couldn't stop a cold, and that's the reason they missed the playoffs. But nobody's going to really care about that. They're going to look at the fact that, if you're a top five quarterback, you got to make the playoffs, and he's missed the playoffs for the 3 straight years. And yeah, that's just the standard that you get holded to. I mean, I don't hold him to that crazy standard. I mean, I still think he's a top five quarterback, assuming that he plays well. If he doesn't play well this year and they miss the playoffs again, then I mean, he certainly deserves criticism for that. But I think it's probably going to be a repeat of last year where he's going to ball out. He's going to play super duper well, but the defense is just going to do him in. And I just take into account situation, and the Bengals, for the most part, have been a poverty franchise. They're just really, really cheap. They don't have like exceptional coaching. And I think with those factors, it's just hard for any quarterback to win in that situation. I don't even think Patrick Mahomes, as great as he is, I mean, maybe they would have won a Super Bowl in that 2022 season where they lost in the AFC Championship to the Bengals. But outside of that, I mean, I don't really see any other quarterbacks doing much with the Bengals last year. I mean, I think Joe Burrow did the best he could, but unfortunately, that isn't going to be enough. And many of his critics, like I said, will say that he's not top five. Some people will say, oh, he's not top 10. You got to make the playoffs. So that's going to be a problem. And I think another issue is that Zach Taylor is probably going to be fired. I mean, many people will say, well, Marvin Lewis was there for like 16, 17 years. He had an 0-7 playoff record, and he didn't win anything, and they didn't advance in the playoffs whatsoever, and he had good rosters. And the Bengals kept him around because he was cheap. And I mean, the mindset will certainly be the same with Zach Taylor, that, he's cheap. He probably won't have a lot of offers in other places, and he would probably like to stick around with the Bengals, and he'd be fine with the Bengals paying him a low amount of money relative to other NFL coaches. But I just think with this iteration of the Bengals team, it's different. I mean, Carson Palmer was a good quarterback, and I mean, Marvin Lewis certainly should have won with the rosters he had. I mean, I'm not saying they should have won a Super Bowl, but I mean, he could have won more than 0 playoff games, but he didn't. But I think like this year with them having like a franchise quarterback in Joe Burrow, I mean, Carson Palmer was good, but he's not Joe Burrow. And them like, having like stud wide receivers in Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, I think ownership will probably look at that and say, we have a pretty good roster. We're doling out a lot of money to our star players, especially our quarterback and wide receiver. And if you can't win with that, then that's an issue. And I think in that situation, he absolutely would get fired, even though he has made it to a Super Bowl and he has made it to an AFC Championship. And the Bengals hadn't been to that point in 40 years. But I think with those factors, I think that he definitely get fired. So definitely an important year for the Bengals, and I think it's important for Zach Taylor's job security that they're able to go into the playoffs and hopefully win a couple playoff games and at least potentially maybe make it to an AFC Championship game, but at the very least win a playoff game, because if they don't, the discourse is going to get bad for Burrow and Zach Taylor is probably going to get fired. Now, another important team in the AFC where it's crucial that they at least make the playoffs is the Miami Dolphins. I mean, it was just a weird ending to their season last year. I mean, Tua talked about how last week that him and Tyreek are still rebuilding the relationship after Tyreek, after the season finale against the Jets, said basically I'm out and he just wants to go somewhere else. And also in that Jets game, it was really weird because he didn't come out for a drive and it wasn't injury related. And that basically tells me that he pretty much quit on the team, which I mean is a no. But I mean, people weren't talking about that very much. And I wonder why. And is also a bunch of other weird noise that players were just coming in late to meetings and Mike McDaniels would find them and they wouldn't care. I mean, I'm assuming that it's the top level players that were coming in late to the meetings, but still, you shouldn't have that as an organization. I mean, I believe that for an NFL team to succeed, everyone has to be on the same page. Everyone's got to be disciplined. I mean, you kind of sort of have to run it like a militaristic operation, and a lot of NFL teams do that. And I mean, you just can't have dudes coming in late, and you got to have discipline to win in the NFL, especially when it's a 53 man roster. You got to be connected. And I'm not saying that that's guaranteed for success, but I just don't think without having discipline and guys being on time, I just don't think you can succeed that way. I think that's a guarantee that you won't succeed. So that's definitely an issue. And there's also like problems with Tua's concussion history. He only played 11 games last year. He only played, I think, about 13 games in 2022. And yeah, it just seems like he can't handle the physicality in the NFL. And whenever Tua doesn't play, I mean, to his credit, the offense falls off a cliff, and they're 3-7 without him since 2022. So it does show that he's important to the team, even though he does have like stud wide receivers and Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. He's still a crucial part of that offense, and the offense just falls apart without him. And I think that this year, I mean, I know that he played 17 games in 2023, but I just think it's important that McDaniels tries to find a way that the offense can like stay at least somewhat competent if Tua goes out. And I think you kind of have to bank on Tua potentially missing 4, 5, 6 games because I just don't know if his body can just take the pounding at the NFL level. And I think you have to account for that. Tua is going to have to miss 4 or 5 games, and you're going to have to find a backup quarterback, or the backup quarterback that you do have. You're going to have to find a way to have an offense catered to him and make sure that, like, the offense can still run at a good, competent level and that you're able to pull some games out. And another thing with the Dolphins is that they're like 0-12 when the temperature is 40 degrees or below, and that just shows me that they're not a very tough football team. I mean, if you can't win in 40 degrees or below, then I mean, you just can't win at a high level whatsoever. I mean, the teams in the AFC, the Baltimores, the Buffaloes, even though they're going through a down period right now, the Patriots, I mean, those are cold weather places, and you're going to have to go to those places. Kansas City also, that behemoth, you're going to have to go to those places, and it's going to get cold in January. And if you can win in below 40-degree weather, then you're not going to win anything whatsoever. So I think it's important that the Dolphins have more toughness, physical toughness this year, and they're able to win in cold weather. And I think just if they miss the playoffs and it's just the same problems again, where the offense falls off a cliff, assuming Tua misses games, they just can't win in below 40-degree weather. Guys are showing up late. Tyreek, there's going to be some beef, I presume, or some conflict, I should say, if the Dolphins just aren't able to win enough games and he doesn't feel that he's getting the ball enough. It's not going to look good for McDaniels. And I personally wouldn't do it, but I think that he may get fired. I think that he's a smart, innovative coach. I think he needs to fix the problem of guys coming in late. He can't have that, and he might have to be like more tough on dudes. But I think he's very clearly a smart, innovative mind, and it's crazy to say that they might fire him, but I think they will. I mean, he rebuilt to his confidence after Brian Flores basically destroyed it, and he got the Dolphins to the playoffs. And I mean, I know they haven't won any playoff games, but he got them to the playoffs, and it had been a while since the Dolphins had been to the playoffs. But just with all those factors against him, and just like, him being perceived as a nice guy and he can't really lead a group of men, it won't look good. And I think that, if the Dolphins have a losing record and there are like rumblings coming out of the locker room that players aren't happy with McDaniels, I think ownership would probably fire him. I don't agree with it, but I think that's definitely going to happen. So it's very important that the Dolphins make the playoffs this year. I mean, they're going to have their work cut out for them with the Bills. I think the Bills are going to win 12 games minimum, assuming that they can stay healthy. But the Patriots, they're probably going to get better, so they're going to have to contend for that. I don't think the Jets are going to be any good with Justin Fields this year. So, they have their work cut out for them with the Bills, and I don't think New England is going to be any easier with Mike Vrabel. So they're going to have to find a way to win some games. Now, I want to talk about my Seattle Seahawks. I'm just excited for this upcoming season. I was pretty disappointed last year. I mean, I know we won 10 games with the rookie head coach, but I thought that we should have made the playoffs at the very least, and that was the goal for the Seahawks, was to make the playoffs after we missed it in Pete Carroll's last year, and I thought we should have been a playoff team that last year with Pete, but we weren't. And also, like, our wins, they just really didn't impress me. We really didn't beat any playoff teams. The only playoff team that we beat was Denver in week 1, and that was Bo Nix's first start, and the Denver just barely snuck into the playoffs. I mean, we lost against the other heavy hitters, whether it was Detroit, Green Bay, Minnesota, the Rams. I mean, we did beat the Rams in the last game in the season finale, but they were benching dudes and we beat them 30-25. So that win doesn't really impress me, and I hope that this year we're able to beat some playoff teams, because if we're not able to beat some playoff teams, we're just simply not going to go into the playoffs. And we changed some things around that make me believe that we will be a better team this year. I like Geno Smith, and I was happy that he was able to resurrect his career with us, and I hope he does well in Las Vegas. But I just think that Darnold's going to be an upgrade. He's younger, cheaper, and he just has more upside. We got rid of DK, and we're going all in on Jackson Smith and Jigba and Cooper Kupp. I hope that Cooper Kupp is able to stay healthy, and I like our young tight ends and Elijah Arroyo and AJ Barner, and we finally improved the O line. I mean, we haven't had a good offensive line since we made the Super Bowl, and that was back when Obama was president. I like how we drafted Gray Zabel in the first round, and I like how we drafted like dudes with potential in the later rounds, and Bryce Cabaldo and Mason Richmond, and I like Zabel alongside Charles Cross and Abe Lucas, and I'm interested to see how it goes with Anthony Bradford and Olo Wamami. And Gino definitely had his faults as a quarterback, but one thing that I can't fault him on is just having bad O-line play. And when you have bad O-line play, especially with a guy like Gino who's doesn't really use his legs a lot. I mean, he can definitely scramble, but he likes to sit back in the pocket. And when your offensive line isn't good, it's just hard to succeed as a quarterback. I mean, I know Joe Burrow has been able to do it, but it's just hard to win at a high level. I mean, even Patrick Mahomes, who's like the greatest quarterback of this generation. I mean, his 2 Super Bowls against the Bucks and the Eagles, a large reason why he struggled, because the offensive line wasn't able to protect him, and Kansas City got blown out in those Super Bowls. So even the greatest quarterback in the NFL needs a good O line. So someone like Geno Smith will definitely need a good O line, and I think that our O line is definitely going to improve. We got some depth. I'm happy with the drafting of Gray Zabel, and I think that Darnold, with his like second year of being a starter, and having Clint Kubiak as his offensive coordinator and upgrading from that position, because it just seemed that Ryan Grubbs was just simply way in over his head. I'm glad that we have a competent offensive coordinator, and I think with better offensive line protection, kind of similar to what he had in Minnesota, and having good wide receivers in Jackson Smith and Jigba and Cooper Kupp. And I think Jackson Smith and Jigba is ready to take that next step, and he'll be able to fill DK's shoes and be wide receiver number 1. I'm excited for the offense. I think that it'll be better, and I think it'll run more smoothly than it did last year. And I also think with the offensive line improving, our running game will be better. I mean, our running game has just kind of been okay. And like I said, it's hard to do that when your offensive line isn't great. But when you have a great offensive line, it opens up holes for running backs to hit and they are able to get more yardage. So I think our offense is definitely going to be better. And I think that with Mike McDonald's second year, I think the defense is also going to be better. And, he kind of has like, confusing defensive schemes for opposing quarterbacks, but it can also be hard for his players to pick up. But I think with it being a second year, he'll be able to like set the culture that he wants. And I think the players will be able to better pick up his defense. So I'm predicting that the Seahawks are going to win 11, 12 games, and I think that should be enough for us to get into the playoffs. I mean, we're going to have our work cut out because the Rams are going to be pretty freaking good, assuming that Matthew Stafford and the other players can stay healthy. I think San Francisco is probably going to have a bounce back year. I mean, they kind of had a weird season last year, but I think this season they'll bounce back. But I think 11, 12 wins should be enough for us to be a wild card team. And I think that'll happen assuming that we can stay healthy. Now I want to talk about my Super Bowl predictions for 2026. In the AFC, I think it's going to be Buffalo. I mean, I don't mean to count out the Chiefs. I know they've been to the Super Bowl in 5 of the past 6 years, but I just think at a certain point their run has to end. And I don't mean that they're not going to make more Super Bowls in the future. I predict that they're going to go to the Super Bowl in the future and that Patrick Mahomes is probably going to win more Super Bowls, but I just don't think it'll be this season. I think, with Kelsey getting older, I mean, they certainly do have a good roster and they can certainly make it to the Super Bowl. I just don't think they're going to do it again. I just think their run has to come to an end, and I think it'll be this season at the very least. And I just think Buffalo's been knocking at the door for a very long time. I mean, they made the AFC Championship last year. They almost beat the Chiefs in the 2021 season, but for some reason their defense couldn't hold on for 13 more seconds, and Patrick Mahomes was able to get the offense into field goal range, and they lost in overtime. But I think this is the year they finally kick down the door. They have a top 10 offensive line. Their wide receiver group, I mean, it's okay. They got Keon Coleman, they got Joshua Palmer, and they got a couple other dudes. But I think with Josh Allen being such a great quarterback and him cutting down on their turnovers, I think that that should be enough. And they have like a pretty decent defense. And I think with the combination of those things, that should help them get to the Super Bowl. I mean, they'll have the they'll have to potentially face the Chiefs, and I think the Ravens will also be a matchup that they may have to face, kind of like they had to face last year. And the Ravens have like a better roster, but I just trust Josh more in the playoffs than I do Lamar. I mean, I like Lamar. I think that he'll break through in the playoffs at some point, but I just think it's going to be Josh's year, and Josh has just shown more to me in terms of being a playoff performer, even though they haven't been able to like make a Super Bowl or win a Super Bowl. I just think Josh has been very good in the playoffs for the most part. And honestly, it's just been Kansas City that's been really blocking their way. And Kansas City has been 4-0 against them in the playoffs. And I just think that Josh is bound to get one. So I think the Bills are going to represent the AFC in the Super Bowl. And for the NFC, this is a tough one. I'm just going to go with kind of like a surprise pick. I just think it's going to be Washington. I really like the upgrades that they made this year and getting Debo Samuel and signing Von Miller, signing Jonathan Jones to their secondary, trading for Laramie Tunzel to improve their offensive line. I just think with the combinations of those things, I don't think Jaden Daniels is going to have a sophomore slump. I think he's going to be better, and he may have like an MVP type level year. I just think that's going to really help them. And I also like how Cliff Kingsbury is sticking around, and how him and Jaden can just build off what they did last year, and they can build it onto this year, and hopefully like get the offense to be even more explosive. I mean, I certainly can't rule out Philadelphia. They have a pretty good roster, but I don't know. Just historically, it's just hard to make the Super Bowl in back-to-back years. I mean, the Chiefs are the only team to win the Super Bowl back-to-back, at least in this decade, and the Patriots did it in the 2000s, and the Patriots did make it to like three straight Super Bowls in the late 2010s. But I just don't think the Eagles are that level of a team, even though they have a pretty good roster and they have a pretty good general manager. I just don't think they're going to be the team to do that. And with Detroit, I'm just concerned about them losing their offensive coordinator and their defensive coordinator. I mean, usually when that happens and the coach isn't like a guy that's calling the plays on the offense or the defense, I think Dan Campbell is more of a CEO coach. I just think it's tough to recover from that, and who knows if the offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator are going to be good. And we'll see how good of a coach Dan Campbell is because, I mean, Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn, they had a big hand in improving that Detroit team. Not to take anything away from Campbell, but they were certainly an integral part in like constructing the defense and the offense. So we'll see how good of a coach he is and like how good X's and O's he is. But I just think with Detroit losing both those pieces, they're not going to be able to make that Super Bowl run. Unfortunately, injuries did them in last year, but I just think Washington, they're just an up and coming team. They're young for the most part. I just think that this is going to be their year. And I mean, I think when you're predicting in the NFL, you just have to take into account that, like, there's a surprise team that makes the Super Bowl. I mean, in 2021, nobody predicted that the Bengals would make the Super Bowl. In 2022, before the season started, I don't think anyone predicted that the Eagles would make the Super Bowl. So, I mean, it happens like a lot of years, and I just think this year the Commanders are going to be the one to make it happen. And yeah, that's all I have for you in my NFL thoughts. I'll have more next week. Thank you so much. Please like and subscribe.